Hello and welcome to the Coaches Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where you can join the coaches live and unscripted as we recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name is Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and I am joined today by Taya Freestead, Ian Murray, Mitch Dengerman, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. We do have a special guest lined up today. We're just trying to make sure we get connected, and if we can, it should be good to go. But we're going to go ahead and get started with the show, and I will jump over to our notes here. And our first topic of the day, as hot topic, is we are going to talk about racing in the winter season. With the advent of indoor training, what we find a lot of the time is we're finding athletes that are wanting to essentially get a whole lot of intensity, a whole lot of time. People are coming into the pain caves as things get cold here in the Northern Hemisphere, but we wanted to touch on a couple things to think about as we talk about our whole season as a whole. I'm going to throw this over to Taya. We're going to start a little bit of a conversation, and I'm going to get this shared out to all of our social media outlets. Take it away.
Thanks, Jason. Hey, everyone. So there are two things to think about here. One is you want to race because you want the intensity. The other one is, are you wanting to race because you're bored? And maybe you are bored of sitting and riding around, and perhaps you don't have a good program to follow, or perhaps you don't have a group to motivate you. So you jump on these races to keep it interesting. So, but really the thing is to ask is, where are you in your training? Or if you don't do structured training, what have you been doing in the past couple of months? And how do you usually structure your year? Are you the kind of rider who goes out in the summer and does long rides, or do you race in the summer? And if you do, then is that your main season? Because if that's your main season, and then you come into the winter, fall and winter, and you continue racing, what's going to happen later on? Chances are you're going to be injured. You're not going to be seeing progression on your training, and you might get tired and really get into overtraining. So yeah. What's with the advent of Zwift, and there's now CVR saying that they're going to be launching a new software for racing, and their season starts in January, and that's racing every week. Just ask yourself, if you are going to do winter racing, then be smart about it, so you're not racing every time you're on the trainer. So you're not racing 2-3 times a week. What you can do a race a week or a race every other week. There's so many that pop up. There's this, there's a winter series of, climbing race, and we see some of our athletes in the lab. All of a sudden, there's this conversation about racing up the mountain every Wednesday, or doing some type of sufferfest going up, and those things add up. So keep in mind, if your main season is summer, and some people even raced in the fall, or are doing events in the fall, be mindful in the winter. Do it once a week. The other days, and by the way, if you race once a week, that's one intensity for your week. Yeah. Then we would recommend doing only one more intensity for the week, and the other day is a skills-based workout, something that you continue to advance your training, but you're not really hitting big numbers and wearing yourself out. So it has to be nicely planned. If you're in the lab, you can join our forum, and we can talk more about this. But do those races no longer than 60 to 75 minutes, because that's the other thing. Some races pop up and they're 2 hours long, or 2.5 hours long. You want to do one of those, that's great, but don't do those every week. It's really not going to be good for your training. And then keep some structured training so you have that to go around and hold you up, so you don't go off and go crazy with your training.
Yeah, the other part too is, if you're going to do that, be willing to pull the plug. So what I've been doing just to join these rides and have fun, I'll race to a certain point, and I'm watching my TSS, and as soon as I hit a certain point, boom, I pull the plug and I sit up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just about testing. Can I sit there and hold for 5 minutes? Or if it's a light day, then maybe I'll wait till the sprint to the end. But if as soon as I get to that point where I feel okay, I'm overdoing it, or I'm watching my TSS, I just sit up.
I mean, in that fashion, Ian, what you're really doing is you're kind of taking a race and making it a intense workout in a certain way, right? I mean, you're thinking, look, I'm doing a 5-minute effort, I'm doing a 10-minute effort. it may not be exact like a workout, but it's still approximating the same thing.
Yeah, the cost, right? The cost that it has in your legs. And that's the thing to think about. In terms of skills, to be quite honest, racing every week is not going to be a training program.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to be advancing your skills or making you faster or improving your VO2. Workouts do that because they're designed to do that. The race is over and over. You look at your files. If you look at your file today and you race every week for an hour in Zwift, after 7 or 8 races, your files are going to look very similar. Your body is very quick to learn what it can do in those situations, and it will sort of follow the same pattern. You'll be surprised. So if you look at your power files, they'll be very similar for all of those races. So the other thing to keep in mind, and we talked about this a couple episodes back, or even in the last episode, winter time is a time for rebuilding and adapting and recovering. You don't want to stop everything because then you're tearing everything down. You have to build everything again from scratch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to give yourself time to really get that, including a mental break, right? You need that mental break too from structured training. So you still, not structured training, from intensity. So you still have the structure to follow, which is good because especially during the holidays that come up, it's so easy to get off. There's so much to do, and all of a sudden you're not following workouts. So it's good to have some accountability, something that you can have that it's stable in your life in the craziness of the holidays. You feel good about it too, right? Because it's there. It's like, you know what, I can go to my training. I know I have that. So yeah.
It's interesting as I'm listening to you, I'm writing a couple of things down, and to me, it's about finding a balance in listening to your body and being able to adapt. So I suppose where you are in your training at the moment is really important. If you're in your preseason or if you're in your recovery, and striking that balance between reactive training, which is like, oh, there's a race, let's go, and sort of being proactive, and whether you need the planning and the structure or the break from the planning and the structure and the play, but always being able to listen at the same time to what your body needs. And it's funny because I'm someone who really needs structure, but right now, after 4 years of structure, like Ian, I'm rebelling on your program at the moment because I'm like, no, I don't want to do that today. But there's still something going on. So I'm trying to keep it play and fun while doing something. And so I suppose it's about what's going to work for us at the same time. And you have to listen to your body because there's a long-term plan here. And if you burn out, it's just silly. But I guess maybe everyone needs to learn where the burnout point is, where that gray shady area is to move forward. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation about how we find our line.
The risk is that people think that line is, well, they don't see the line because they just say to themselves, oh, I'm not making any progress. I guess I'm not training the right way, or I'm not, maybe I should switch coaches, or maybe I should get a coach, or maybe I should have no coach because I'm not making any progress. When in reality, you're just keep going and going without stopping and taking a break. It's just
and the other part too. And I was having this conversation with someone over the week. There's two things. One is that I always say you have your off season where you do no plan, no nothing for 2 weeks. You get on when you feel like getting on. You don't when you don't. You have fun. If it's not feeling fun, then you don't do it. If you want to sleep in that day, then you sleep in that day. A week or two just to let the body recover and get over it. But the second part is when you do reintroduce that structure in the very beginning of your resuming of your training, you have to look at it and say, okay, I'm going to follow the plan, but at the same time, I'm going to back off a little bit when I feel like backing off. But at least I have a guide, so I'm somewhat accountable. And going through that, you're going to have a dip in your fitness. And that freaks a lot of people out. But you have to look at your year as it's like, for lack of a better term, the stock market. It's up and down and up and down. It's a general upward trend, not like this week, but a general upward trend that your fitness is always going to get better. So if I take 2 weeks off, my fitness may not be as good at the end of that 2 weeks as it was when I was peaking for a race. But if I look at where I was a year ago, it's my general fitness, my general power, my general strength is up. A few percentage points or a lot, depending on where you started from.
So I'll I'll give the transition lab as an example here. So we're going to start the transition lab next week. And people have been off this week. Next week, the transition lab is designed to give you the skills, but there's flexibility built in it. So you have the flexibility to add the fun into that week. And the structured training that is in there is to guide you. And if you look at in terms of training stress score for those workouts, they're not the high training stress score. They're going to be low, which is going to allow you to rest. But at the same time, you're working your muscles in a different way because we're working on high cadence, low cadence. We're working on some of those neurological, pathways. And so with that, you have the flexibility, you can add the fun, but you're not completely tearing down all of the training that you built.
Yeah, I mean, we're barely going to break 1,000 TSS most weeks.
Barely. My gosh. Yeah, I recorded the first of the videos for the transition lab, and it was speed and efficiency. So really think of how we talk about our recovery weeks, and we do lots of skills. There's going to be a lot of that at Power. It's going to allow you to get an idea of how things should be feeling like. And again, it's lower on TSS, so it's going to allow you some freedoms. We've got some zone 2 rides that you'll be able to fill in. This is how this transition time should work, where you still are feeding our type A personalities of wanting to fill the boxes, but we're filling them with things that are going to help us in the long run. That's the goal.
I can see how crucial those workouts are after being off for the 2 months. Like, you do lose that neuromuscular function and ability to go at high cadence, and just the movement on the bikes. Like it's important. Like, we can just go and ride, but you're going to lose some of it.
I had a hard time 10 days after.
It's interesting
being off.
But it comes back real quick too.
It does, yeah.
I mean, like, I've never really done a lot of the low cadence work, and Pat keeps giving me all cadence kind of workouts. I think Andy Jenner's telling him to do that. And so I've been doing a lot of low cadence, and I'm telling you, I've noticed a difference in my strength, and I think it's from the low cadence. I mean, it's a skill I haven't really developed much, and I've been doing it a lot, and you get better and you adapt pretty quick.
Yeah. On the topic of like off time and weeks, Carrie Thomas here on the live streams talking about how she likes usually during the season do about once a week as far as group rides and the one race per week. But on the off season, she really tries to go by feel. If she doesn't feel like doing that race, she finds something else to do. And you just got to be honest. And if you're able to do that sort of thing, I think that's great. And then Linda Sawyer here is talking about doing fat bike racing in New England. I haven't ridden one yet, so I don't quite get it, but it looks super fun, at least where people do it. But it's just pulling around a heavy bike. I don't know. I just don't quite get it yet. Mitch may be able to help me with the snow.
No. My favorite is I live in a snow area. I've never used a fat bike, but my favorite is when I see the guy on the sidewalk with the really big fat tires.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, no, it's supposed to be on sand or snow. I've got a friend in Grand Rapids, and they get a lot of snow, and he's real into the fat bike, and like all winter long, it's all trails in the snow.
That's nuts.
So Seth actually had a great comment here. Seth and Deirdre are listening, and they live in Key West, and they actually had the comment of what's winter. But that's actually a very good point. So a lot of us are forced due to living in climates or in regions that have horrible weather, and it's just absolutely inhumane out.
Because it's so bad in DC.
It's
like what, 65?
No, it's like 40 degrees now. It's going to snow today. It's
so they get frost on their car once a year. I mean, geez.
Yeah. Anyways, the point being is that it forces us into some of our breaks from doing certain amount of training, especially going outdoors. Mm-hmm. When you live down there, there's no end to a race season.
Yeah.
You can just train hard outdoors all year round.
Yeah.
And so it does give you that time where this is nice, where you can take that time to make a break, because the weather tells you that biologically the weather's telling us, hey, it's time to shut it down and hibernate. Yeah. Whereas when you're living in that nice, awesome weather, which is where sane people live, you can train, and that's actually the hardest part with athletes, is that there is no external climatological cue for them to dial it back.
Right.
That's a good point. I mean, there's definitely race seasons in Michigan and Illinois. Yeah. There are things in the winter. But you don't see me doing it.
Or me.
Yeah. Yeah, Linda's talking about she's doing a metric century today outside, and it's 27 degrees out.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Linda,
that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, but she's got a great schedule.
Yeah.
I work with Linda, and she is able to go out all winter long, and she does night rides too,
Wow.
like moonlight type rides,
my
which is
God.
great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Speaking to seasons is interesting. I had a friend visiting from he's originally from New York, and he's Pittsburgh now, and he comes over to California. He's like, oh, I want to do some group rides. He had a couple ones that he's seen online that he wanted to do. He comes up. I roll up to the group meetup, and he's like completely covered. It's gonna be like 60. So here, California, that means just your kit. Is anything close to 60, you shouldn't be wearing anything else other than your kit. And he's all covered up. I'm like, why are you all covered up? He goes, no, I knew it was California. Everyone's got shaved legs, top fitness in November, so I wanted to just hide myself. And so everybody rolls up, everyone's grouping up, and he's like, look, see, I told you. And I'm like, yeah, it's one of those warm weather states, 60 plus, and it was, of course, hammered off the front the whole time. So it was a good time. You really enjoyed it. But I definitely see that here where people are just bringing fitness all the time. And I deal with it with riders here because there's an upgrade series for crit series, right? So everyone's all of a sudden working for that. I'm like, well, we should be working on our skills on how to race, not learning to win these races. And so it's really hard to shift those riders into that kind of mental mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys think about? Because I'm a structure guy. If it's not on a calendar and if it's not laid out, I'm not going to do it because I'll find excuses. What do you think about actually planning out and saying, look, on a Saturday, I'm going to give myself a race, and 2 Saturdays from now, I'm going to give it. So you have the structure around it and put it in the calendar and kind of figure out what the impact's going to be.
Yeah, no, we do that. Like Seth, who's listening, we do that all the time with him for his training to help mix it up. So when we're doing, for most of the triathletes, when we're going long, I will give them a workout, and then we'll cap it off with a coffee ride or a cat and mouse with the idea of really hammering that intensity, and then they have to go run afterwards.
And it's almost almost like a C event in some way if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
When you go through an A, B, and C events, and
If I have to run someone ride 3.5, 4 hours, if I can do an hour and 20-minute workout and then an hour hard effort, that's equivalent to, TSS-wise doing a harder or a steadier state 3-hour ride. Yeah. And then I make them go run off of a VO2 effort, and then they hate me. But it works.
Yeah. Andrea, what were you saying there?
Oh, my structure, I get my phone out on a Sunday and I look at the weather forecast for the week, and I have to pick the days where there's no rain, and then I'll be like, okay, that's my run day. And then you put everything around that. But the weather, because we're on the Atlantic, it will change in the middle of the week, and then it'll be all wet and stuff. But that's how the structure happens during the winter here. You're just looking at when can I get outside and not get soaked.
Yeah. Totally.
So I'm going to add a comment here on long rides on the trainer, since we're talking about trainer time, etc. The one thing to keep in mind is also, so again, some riders out of boredom, they're just, I want to ride long, so they sit on a trainer for 3-4 hours on a Sunday. And the caveat with that is being on the trainer is not the same as being outside, obviously. But the thing to think about is your body is still. Your bike is still. That's different than being outside. This is where we see a lot of overuse injuries popping up, because you are sitting in that same, when you're outside, you move and you don't even realize how much you move on your saddle, out of the saddle, in the saddle. You're doing so much, there's a red light, there's a stop, there's whatever it is. You're coasting, you're going downhill, it's changing positions. You change your hands, you change your, the way you're leaning on the bike, you're on the drops, etc. That doesn't happen indoors. So really be careful with those very long rides on the trainer. And also, you can break them up. So if you need to do a 4-hour ride, you can do 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours later in the evening, just to give yourself a break. And also the hours spent on the trainer. And I'm not talking about a workout here. I'm not talking about a structured intensity workout. The hours on the trainer are condensed when you think about indoors versus out. So 2 hours on the trainer might be the equivalent of 2.5 to 3 hours outside. So just keep those things in mind.
Yeah. All right. So confession time. Longest ride on indoor trainer, Taya.
It was a Imperial Century. So 100 miles. Yeah. And that was about 4 hours. But that was 2 years ago, because figure that's not giving me any benefit in terms of training. So
Right.
haven't done it.
All right, Andrea, longest trainer ride.
I think I went over maybe 95K just because I wanted to finish the movie.
That's awesome.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. All right, Mitch, yeah, longest trainer ride.
I'm going to surprise you guys here. 117 miles.
Wow.
Oh.
Wait, was that a team event? I can't remember.
I think it was. I think it was a team event.
I think that would be my longest too. It was nuts. I'm glad everyone was there.
I was so sore in so many places when we got over there.
I do remember that. We had groups that went out. I do remember you were one of the
and the sad thing is, really quick though, that's the longest bike ride I've ever done. Period. and I don't think, this is a true confession here, I don't think I've ever done a century outdoors.
No?
No, I don't think I have.
That's odd. When I was at
That's odd.
That is odd.
Mitch is out of the club.
Yeah. Can we turn him off now? Like, wait, where's the?
All right, Ian, what's the longest training ride indoors?
About 5 hours and 40 minutes, and it was on a Life Fitness bike in a gym.
Oh, no way.
I hope you got paid for that one.
And it was in a third world country somewhere.
It was.
So it was a really old, crappy Life Fitness bike.
It was just
How did you not get injured like everywhere? You know.
And that was
I
in
had a
tennis
lot of
shoes
hate
too,
and
right?
anger built up.
Tennis shoes with the rubber thing over the toe.
Man, that's
no. So I brought my own pedals.
Nice.
I brought my own pedals. So every time I go to the gym, I would switch out the pedals and put mine and my shoes on.
Okay.
That's dedication.
Wow.
But I was wearing my uniform PT shirt, so it was just, cotton, sweat.
Man.
That was horrible.
Oh man.
Were you wearing the little army running shorts, or were you wearing bike shorts?
Yeah, I had bike shorts on. Shorts on.
All right, so Carrie Thomas here on the live stream chimes in 4.5 hours last spring. That's in the last year. Deidre says 7 hours. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my
That's right.
God,
Wow.
7 hours. Andy says that Andy Jenner, our favorite listener watcher, is he's done an Imperial once.
Oh, yours.
And
Your favorite.
Zwift crashed, and that means it never happened.
It never happened. No. Yeah, I've done a 10-hour ride. Too bad Zwift crashed and the file was corrupted.
It must have been. I think we got one more little thing here, Taya, that we want to talk about, especially if you're doing a lot of indoor training. Obviously, around this 2.5 hour, I think you can get what you need done. I think 3 hours is kind of really a cap max. I've got riders that are like 30-minute cap, so I've got to get the work done in 30 minutes. So, but for those, I guess, narcissistic ones that are just really, really pushing hard, but 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you should be able to get all the work you need done. What was that last one there that we were going to hit?
Bike fit. So
yes.
Revisit that. Spending a lot of time on your bike indoors, your saddle might have moved down. Just make sure you're doing maintenance on your indoor bike and make sure the fit is still the fit. You should get bike fits periodically. It's not like you get it once and then you never get them again. You don't have to get them every 4 months, but you should get them periodically. How you just say once a year, at least, right? And especially going to be spending again a lot of time, and there's not a lot of movement. Your bike is still, and so make sure you have a good fit on your bike.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and your body will change. If you're doing mobility work, you are let's say you're tight that week, things are going to change. So understand that, and you may have a little bit of a different fit, kind of for your indoor setup and for your outdoor setup. So definitely keep that in mind.
That's typically, the reach of your handlebars as you can lean forward a little bit more. The saddle height rarely changes, but yeah.
All right, excellent. All right, so if you guys have any more comments about racing in the winter season, go ahead and drop them here in our live stream. We'll go ahead and make sure we circle back. We definitely would love to hear your longest ride here on the indoor trainer, and definitely share that with the group. We're gonna slide on over. We were planning to have a special guest today, Coach Nate Last. But we were having trouble connecting today. But we would still like to talk about something here as far as mental skills. I'm going to have Ian introduce it, and then we're going to start a little bit of a conversation about what we're going to talk about. And essentially, it's called imposter syndrome. He's going to try to break it down. He's going to tell us how dysfunctional he is, and we're going to see if we can fix that here today.
Yeah, so I am wildly mentally dysfunctional, and everyone who knows me well would agree with that. No, so imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people suffer from, especially people who are high performers, surprisingly. Imposter syndrome is basically you feeling that you're not at the level you should be to be in the position you are. So whether that's in your job or whether it's an athlete, people who are at high level, the Olympics, qualifying for world championships, with the I don't feel I deserve to be here type thing. That's your imposter syndrome. Now, there's a couple parts of the imposter syndrome. Some of that, one part is you are qualified, competent, and capable enough to be there. And then the other side is you're not. And so that's not really what we call imposter. That's called fraud. But it's not necessarily bad fraud, nefarious fraud. It may just be you got put into a position because your boss saw something about you that you were good, or you happen to be at a race that maybe wasn't the highest level. And so you qualified for another race, or you got to another race that maybe at the most competitive races, you probably wouldn't have made it through that time. And so there's a couple things. I want to address that first because I think that's actually the easiest part to address than the other side. So when you're feeling when it's actually fraud, when you are not qualified, competent, and capable enough to be where you are, there's two things you can do. One is you can mitigate that with coping mechanisms where you become the funny guy, you become the guy who is, everyone likes, but everyone kind of knows you're not that person, not really that capable person. You're pack fodder or whatever you want to be. And then you just kind of accept that and you try and make it look like you're not as much of a fraud as you are. Or you can work your butt off and become competent, capable, and qualified and be that person. So whether it's on your job, whether it's learning new tasks, new skills, or whether it's training as an athlete to be where you need to be to actually be competitive in that environment.
May I ask a question on that?
What's that, Andrew?
I have a question on what you just spoke about there.
Okay.
Roll down.
So roll down's a good thing. It's a great way to put it. So if you're looking at going to a world championship race to just experience the race and have fun, then do you really care if you're not qualified, competent, or capable? No, because a lot of people understand if I was 25th or 28th in my age group and it rolled down to me, then I'm not at the pointy edge of the spear.
Okay.
But maybe I actually finished second or third, but it just wasn't a very competitive race. Mm-hmm. So I earned my spot straight up, not roll down, but earned my spot. But at the end of the day, if I was running a 5:02 half Ironman at a not slow course, I'm not really at the pointy edge of the spear. So I have to understand that I need to do the work to get to that pointy edge of the spear if I want to get past the fraud side of the house. And again, please don't take the word fraud as a negative. It just means that you are not at the skill level or capability level that others who are in that same position are. So again, you can work to get there. And like I said, I think roll downs are a tricky little situation because a lot of people who view the roll down are viewing it from the perspective of if you're down the 25th, 28th, 30th position, you get the roll down of, yes, I get to go to a cool race. Whereas if you roll down to 5th or 6th, I mean, if you're qualifying, if you're going to roll down 5th or 6th, but it's at Ironman North America Championships, well, okay, you're not a fraud. You're qualified, competent, capable. You just happen to be probably someone else that already had a slot. So that's a little bit different. Now, what I think is the bigger one to address for most of the people that we deal with is the actual imposter syndrome. That's when you are capable, when you are competent, when you are qualified, but you feel you're not, right? So this is going to lead to one of two things. Generally, it's going to lead you to working hard to try and make yourself feel that you're competent, qualified, and capable. And that's probably going to drive you. So if you look at guys like Usain Bolt, if you look at guys if you look at Glenn Jorgensen, if you look at Lance Armstrong, you look at a bunch of those high level performers, they always felt like they weren't good enough. It's like, dude, you're a gold medalist multiple times over. I'm not quite good enough. So that's what drove them and pushed them to always be at that top level. That was their edge. Where you get into problems with that is when you can't control that and you feel I'm not good enough. So then it's I over diet. So if you look at TJ Van Garderen a few years ago at the tour, he was right on the cusp at Tour de Suisse. And what did he do? Oh, I'm just there. I'm not quite good enough to be with these guys. So he lost like 4 or 5 kilos, and then he just couldn't hang. So if you feel you're not qualified, capable, or competent, and you overdo it, try to overcompensate, you're actually going to make yourself fall into that fraudulent level, because you're gonna sabotage, you're gonna damage yourself, you're gonna hurt your body, you're gonna overtrain, you're gonna undernourish, you're gonna make changes to your setup. Like, I don't know, do a 7-hour training session a week before Kona.
Sounds like Lionel Sanders.
Pointed fingers.
Yeah, but those are things, again. But if you look at, again, a guy like Lionel Sanders is a perfect example. He doesn't feel he's good enough to be at that level, right? Mentally, if you look at him, you listen to what he says, he doesn't think he's at Frodo's level. But I mean, the guy obviously is. Yeah, Deirdre's laughing, Lionel. But that's where imposter syndrome defeated him more than the race defeated him, because the things he did leading up in the 3 months prior to Kona, he set himself up for failure. And so that's what the hard part is with imposter syndrome. And I know we've all experienced it in some levels. You know, you get to that race and you're like, I don't think I'm as good as these guys, so maybe I don't attack when I should. Maybe I'm hesitant, or maybe I attack really early instead of waiting till later, or it messes up my tactics, or I settle into a pace that is way easier than I probably can, because I'm afraid of blowing up, because I'm afraid of making myself look bad. I'm afraid of what everyone's going to say when instead of 10 hours, I do 11:30, stuff like that. So, yeah.
So I see two things here. One is that I think it's probably good for you to have a coach or someone you can actually talk to about these things and can recognize it, because I think the issue is athletes have a hard time recognizing this. But then the other issue is, as a coach, how do you handle this, Ian?
So this is actually, I think this is where a good coach is worth their weight in gold, because anyone can put a plan out there, but it's identifying when your athlete's losing confidence and when your athlete is not sure of where they are, where they stand. And if you don't have that frank relationship with your athlete, sometimes I've had to tell athletes, hey, you're not going to reach your goal in this one. You're just not, because of life got in the way, training got in the way, whatever was the case. So this is what we're going to refocus our goals on. Yes. And other times it's, hey, you got this. Look at all the things you've done. So all you can do right now is you race your race, and then this is how it's going to work out. So you have to work that in there, and you have to control. And sometimes it's also looking at what the athlete's doing and forcing them to dial back and say stop, stop. And you have to be willing as a coach to throw down an ultimatum if your athlete is not listening and they're doing things that are sabotaging themselves. To say, look, we're going to have to part ways if you continue going that way, because you're not following what I'm prescribing. So that means you don't have confidence in what I'm doing, or it's just not a relationship that's working out, because we're not communicating effectively.
I think a key word there, though, is communicating too, right? And I was just sitting here thinking, as we move forward in kind of this new world we're in, where everything is electronic and communication is more like this instead of sometimes face-to-face, you almost have to over-communicate in some ways, because you're not always in the same room with each other. You're not always talking in person. So you almost have to over-communicate and over-share so they can actually, a coach and the athlete can actually have that relationship where they can understand each other.
The other thing that is helpful is to build that confidence for the athlete. It's helpful if their training is very similar to what they're going to do out there.
Right.
So if they're doing intervals and things that they know they can execute, right? Once and it's very close to what they're going to do in a race. So let's say it's a crit, or it's a cyclocross race, or it's a hilly race, or whatever it is, or it's a hilly ride. You've been practicing that in training. You're confident, because what you're going to do out there is so you're going to have, of course, you're going to have the jitters. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious, but that's different. That's different than thinking you cannot accomplish something.
Right. And that's one of the things that, Deirdre said she did her 7-hour trainer ride. That was in prep for Challenge Roth in Germany. And it was, it was a mentally difficult day for her, obviously. But she got through that. And once she got through that, she's like, hey, I got this. I can do this. So it's a matter of you do need someone there to help you with that confidence. And I think it was Linda or Carrie that had said having that good support group. That is important. You do need that, but besides just your coach, if you have the family there, I mean, it's really tough if you have your significant other who's always going, yeah, you're probably going to fail. You're pretty much worthless. Nobody likes you. I mean, I'm expecting you to fail, which is why I'm not even going to show up until later. You know, it's just nice to have people there who are going to talk you off that ledge. But you do have to make sure those people are not going to tell you what they think you want to hear. They have to tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah.
I will say this though, sometimes it is about bolstering up that ego. It is about bolstering that self-confidence. And that's ultimately very important the closer you get to race day.
And I said
Especially
this before,
when
you go,
you haven't done.
Yeah, and when you go to a race, you think about what you're going to give to it, and you cannot control anyone around you, right? You can only control yourself. So you just tell yourself, I'm here, and I'm going to do the best that I can in here right now. Who knows? If you look around the start line and you know some of the racers, and there's the person who's always in the podium. That's the other person who's always in the podium. Yeah. I'm not even gonna. It doesn't matter. You never know. The race is not over until it's over. The event's not over until it's over. You just never know. Just do
People fly all the time.
Yeah.
So Ian, with some athletes have difficulty saying that they're genetically gifted. So we have everyone and they work really hard. And some of us working really hard will be in the middle. Some of us will be in the back working hard, and some of us will be at the front. And then there's ones that are a little bit special because they work hard and they have genetics. But we also have those with genetics that don't do any work. So how do you get these athletes over the roadblock of just accepting, yeah, have it? I suppose it's like I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to verbalize here, but you see some and they just think it's hard work, but they can't see that they have good talent too. And to bring that out, but also to let go and trust at the same time.
So I think there's some top tier pro cyclists that you see this in that are phenomenally genetically gifted, and they work really hard. But when it comes down to it, it's that one day they mentally break. Usually it's a time trial because they're small French climbers. or something along those lines.
It could be that Colombian climber.
Yeah, it could be a Colombian climber too. But you do see it, and you do see it in every walk of life where there are people who just don't have that confidence. And that's the hardest part for a coach, I think, is you have to walk that fine line of boosting their ego and self-confidence with giving them a realistic approach. And I think for a lot of those people, boxing and MMA are probably the best ways to show how you can do that progression. What we don't have really in the cycling and triathlon and in the running world is your stepping stone fights like you have in boxing and MMA. When you have a prodigy in boxing, you don't get him a fight and then say, okay, heavyweight championship next week. You have him fight some guy who's probably got 30 or 40 fights but is like 2-30. So you get some confidence there, and then you fight another younger guy who's probably not nearly as skilled, and then so you beat someone like that, and then you just keep stepping them up. Well, we don't have that. We used to have that where you had a lot of local races, so you could take a very talented youth or young athlete and let them do that local 5K or that local 10K or that local tri or the local crits. Those have gone away largely. Cycling still has some of that. But it's still very different because I think in cycling, you take that jump from the local racing to the national level or even the state level. It's a huge jump. And if you're 19, 20, 21, it's generally not too bad because you're arrogant. You have this, you don't even know how crazy you are. But when you're 24, 25, it's a little harder. And when you're trying to do it at the older age groups where maybe you weren't a good athlete growing up because of whatever reason, you have to have that build in you. And I think I think women have a harder time with this because of societally how we push certain things. And there's a sliver of women who are just the most brutal cutthroat racers I've ever met in my life who have no problem whatsoever. Yeah. They are the ones they'll cut you if they get a chance. And and they have no issues with it. You know, they're the ones who will knock over the cups at the aid station, so you can't get a drink. But
Hey,
women
that's a good idea.
women are generally told they have to be, societally speaking, they have to be nice, they have to be friendly. They're not supposed to be cutthroat, go for the jugular. And I think that breeds a certain level of limiting factor in the self-confidence that for me is better if you can build that through a series of stepping stone races, unless you can just convince her that push your brother over, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's hilarious. Playing tennis as a kid, you hit the winning shot, and every time, sorry, you apologize.
Wow.
Right.
See, and this is why I tell my 8-year-old in the swim lanes when that boy won't get out of her way, just grab his ankle and pull him back and just.
No, Mitch, no, you don't tell her that. Because if you grab the ankle, that's shown. Grabbing the ankle is like you purposely did that. If you just swim over, pop the hips down, come over.
My daughter does that naturally. She's like, she was too close to me. I just kicked her in the water.
Right.
All right, we'll try that tonight, Ian.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, definitely a great conversation. Yeah. So as our listeners are listening to this, and you go back, rewind it, go back to the beginning of this. Now that we've had a conversation about it, kind of see what comes up in your personality that you can relate to with our conversation, and kind of the things that you can put out there as goals, or that you can work with us as coaches, or with your coach at home, to figure out where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and how you could turn that around. And I think that is really the take home message here, and kind of just getting an understanding of what might be causing some of those things that when we do get up to those A races, or when you are looking to perform, and what you need to look at yourself as, and trying to put yourself in the right position, and the right mindset, essentially. And you need that support system, like some of our viewers are saying here, to make sure that you have that around you, and you support yourself, so that it becomes a positive way, whether it be at work or whether it be in our sport. It's super important.
Yeah, and the last thing, sorry, for me is that if the biggest part of this is really having some self-awareness and understand, do you just feel like you're not confident, capable, and qualified, or are you not confident, capable, and qualified? Because you can rectify that if you aren't. You can train, you can study, you can do whatever you got to do to get there. But if you're here, just use that to help you keep your edge.
Yeah. It sounds like a mantra: capable, qualified, capable. I like it.
See,
I like it.
You're such an imposter, Jason. You can't even say 3 words.
I can't even say it. There you go. Oh, there was one more comment up here at the top.
I'm going to make a quick comment. Going back to the gifted, genetically gifted athlete, etc., as they are kids, right? And you see such big talent, and they're not working hard enough. And you tell yourself, sometimes as a parent, you say, what do I do? What do I do with this? And I think it boils down to doing what you love, finding something that you really enjoy. It's not work, and you enjoy. And you know what? It might not be what your parents thought you were good at. You're a gifted athlete. You'll find your thing. As adults now, think about it that way too. When you go to a race or you go to an event, you're doing it because you like it. You chose to be there.
My mom was exceptional, actually, when we were young. She was very tough on us, but once we started something, we had to see it through to a certain level of competency before we could turn around and say, Mom, I don't want to do this. We actually really knew if we liked it or not. So an example was the piano. I couldn't just decide in the first few months that this was too hard. I had to go to a level where I had given it a shot. I was at a level of skill where I could enjoy it and then make a decision. So the follow through, once you asked for something or started something, I think that was something
good. Yeah.
Unless your talent is stealing cars, then don't encourage that.
Keep doing it until you know that that's not something you should do. Excellent. All right. So really great conversation here. We're going to slide on over to a little bit of what we have coming up on the horizon. So we've talked a lot about off season and the different things that we should be focusing on. things that you could look kind of introspectively at yourself and what you can be working on during this time. So when you get to that time, if you're not in the off season now, these are something that you can put on your list. You can come back and listen to that. So for those riders that are coming up, I'm going to pass this on over to Taya. We do have a transition lab that's coming up, and I believe it begins next week. Is that right?
That's right. So this one, in fact, we're doing a holiday special on it. So if you have not done any of our labs, this is a great place to start. We have a special price on that lab for the upcoming 6 weeks. And it's going to fit in nicely with the holidays because it will give you the flexibility to work around it while keeping you on track. So really, this is a transition period where we decrease the intensity and volume, allowing the body to recover and adapt, but we're still working on strength and endurance to build a solid base for your next season. And we're going to have some off the bike strength workouts as well that we're going to build into it.
Yeah, and a lot of those workouts don't require you to head to the gym. A lot of those things are can be done at home. Ian likes to lift small children and milk jugs. So if those are available, you always use
lift milk jugs. Throw small children.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I knew
That
it.
is the wrong order. Yeah, when Ian visited, Rhineland did love the throwing part, so it's not a bad thing. My son did enjoy that throwing part, so that's all right.
He's still young enough that he bounces.
Yeah. So
sometimes Ian goes to the bar and participates on the other end of that too. On
getting thrown.
Hey man, it's money.
Oh man, oh my God. So definitely check out the Transition Lab if you haven't done one of our labs before. This is a great time to get started. It's a great kind of starting point to get an idea of the kind of coaching that we do, the group that we build, and really the camaraderie that we have within our group as well. So head over to endurancelab.fit for that. I'm just going to reach out to the coaches here. Was there anything else we wanted to chat about? Any more comments about the two things we talked about with between racing during this winter season and kind of how we can become better imposters in our sports?
No, I just want to give a shout out and thanks to Barrett Printing for hooking us up with our hats and shirts that Jason and I have on, and
if I can find mine.
Mitch decided you want to dress appropriately for work today.
I gotta maintain that imposter image.
There you go. Giving
I'm
you the
just gonna
skills.
Just the next few weeks for a lot of people can be quite stressful regarding food or exercise. So that forum that we run is there for people if they've challenges or want advice, or even stuff with coughs and colds. Between the five of us, we all have a lot of qualifications to support you. So avail of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Reach out to that. So if you want to hear more, that is at discuss.endurancelab.fit, or just head over to endurancelab.fit. All the information will be there for all our viewers, listeners, new and old. All right, so I want to thank everybody here for joining us today in the Coach's Corner. And if it's your first time listening, thank you. And would like to hear more content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search the Endurance Lab, or head over to YouTube and do the same. And don't forget to click subscribe. For more information when our next lab is, it starts next week. Head over to endurancelab.fit to learn where you can join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week.